Long ago, the gate to another world opened, releasing a cold energy that froze the land and left behind an everlasting disaster. It was foretold that a chosen one would emerge to act on behalf of the divine will and restore balance. However, if that moment were missed, the world would be doomed to an eternal abyss of despair. King Kronos read this prophecy and reflected on its meaning. Until now, those who had received the prophecy had failed to realize their ambition of conquering the continent. But this time would be different. The second gate had opened, and Kronos had gained the power to challenge its adversaries. Their desperate resistance would soon come to an end. King Kronos declared that it was never a lack of strength that had prevented the Kronos Empire from conquering the continent. He vowed to make the world understand this truth. In the battle at Rascal, the advanced base of the Kronos Empire, where 10,000 troops were stationed, was completely wiped out. Yet, Dimitri's forces did not suffer a single casualty. Enraged by this humiliating defeat, the Kronos Empire issued a summoning order. As a result, excluding Redford, the Third International Conference of the three allied kingdoms was convened. King Odelia, frustrated, demands an explanation from King Frank. In response, King Frank states that his words should be taken at face value. Rather than living in constant fear under the rule of the Kronos Empire, he would rather take even the slightest chance at victory. He expresses his desire to follow Dimitri. Apologizing, he insists that he must at least have a conversation with Dimitri before making any decisions. With that, King Frank leaves. Shocked by this turn of events, King Odelia stands in disbelief, realizing that his position is now at great risk. The scene then shifts to a room where King Odelia stands before a magical communication crystal. He contemplates the situation, recognizing that if the Dimitri alliance is defeated, the Kronos Empire's conquest of the continent will become a reality. He understands that the alliance must choose its side before that happens. A count informs King Odelia that his concerns are based on a false premise. He explains that King Kronos is furious over the events at Rascal. Even if all the allied kingdoms were to support Dimitri, the empire-wide summoning order has already been issued. As a result, the alliance kingdoms will be wiped from the continent. However, the Count reassures King Odelia that he still has an important role to play in the unfolding events. The scene then shifts once more, a few days later, to a defense post. Baron Boris greets a distinguished guest and expresses his gratitude for undertaking such a long journey. The man he is addressing is a seasoned warrior, a commander who has led countless battles to victory. Known as the symbol of the Kronos military, he arrives at the first defense post with approximately 30,000 troops. This formidable figure is none other than Duke Bamford, the commander of the Kronos Empire. Upon his arrival, Duke Bamford immediately inquires about the current situation. Baron Boris reports that Dimitri has allied with Cairo, and their forces are now concentrated on the Western Front. Kronos has yet to fully discern Dimitri's intentions, but it appears they are preparing for a siege. Meanwhile, Redford, Hector, and Frank have rebelled, issuing their own summoning orders, while Odelia and Umberto seem to remain on Kronos' side. Hearing this, Duke Bamford reflects on the situation, acknowledging that many kingdoms have turned against Kronos. The world has truly changed, he remarks. However, he remains resolute, declaring that this war marks the beginning of the continent's conquest. With a serious expression, he announces that in 10 days, Kronos will launch a full-scale attack on Cairo and Dimitri. The Kronos forces shout in unison, affirming their understanding of the Duke's command. However, chaos suddenly erupts in the camp as soldiers begin to fall ill without warning. Baron Boris rushes to Duke Bamford and reports, since this morning, the soldiers' condition has been deteriorating. Many are collapsing with symptoms of fever and nausea. The number of affected soldiers has already reached 10,000, and about 300 have died. Hearing this, Duke Bamford immediately suspects that Roman has used poison. Without hesitation, he orders Baron Boris, inspect the wells and all sources of drinking water. Find the origin of the contamination. Also, request assistance from the Behemoth Magic Tower immediately. Baron Boris nods. Understood. The scene then shifts inside the camp, where Duke Bamford speaks with the Tower Master of the Behemoth Magic Tower. Can the soldiers be treated, he asks. Baron Boris, visibly frustrated, interjects, Right now, poisoning symptoms have appeared not only at the first defense post, but at 7 others as well. If this continues, the damage will be catastrophic. The Tower Master dismissively waves his hand. Be quiet, he commands. Observing this, Duke Bamford narrows his eyes and thinks to himself, these magicians from the Behemoth Magic Tower are as arrogant as ever. The Magic Tower Master declares, I will begin the detoxification process now. This poison must be deciphered at all costs. The other mages of the Behemoth Magic Tower acknowledge the order, and a total of 32 mages begin analyzing the poison. However, moments later, the Tower Master's expression shifts to shock. This is impossible, he mutters. He quickly realizes that the poison completely defies existing knowledge. It takes years to develop a new poison like this. He thinks to himself. Without hesitation, he rushes toward an injured soldier and urgently commands the other mages to stop. Startled, the mages turn to him and ask, what's going on? The Tower Master's eyes widen in realization. This isn't just one poison. He murmurs. Duke Bamford steps forward and demands, explain. What's happening? The Tower Master takes a deep breath and replies, give me a little more time. I need to confirm something. As he continues his analysis, a chilling truth unfolds in his mind. Across all 8 defense posts, 32 different types of poison have been discovered. But the real problem is far worse. All 32 of these poisons are completely unknown on the Salamander continent. And with war looming over Kronos, the Tower Master grimly states, there is no way to neutralize this many poisons in such a short time. The detoxification process is impossible. Hearing this, Duke Bamford is stunned. Even the proud Behemoth Magic Tower Master admits defeat. He thinks, no amount of pressure can solve this problem. After a brief moment of reflection, Duke Bamford quickly regains his composure and orders Baron Boris, isolate all the poisoned soldiers immediately. Handle this discreetly to avoid panic among the troops. And contact Dimitry at once. According to the continental laws of war, Kronos will hold him accountable for using poison. The scene then shifts to Cairo's headquarters. At the Western Command Post, Marquis Vanderberg informs his officers that Kronos has requested a discussion. He further states that the Empire has committed so many atrocities that invoking continental laws has become meaningless. In response, Chief of Staff Baron Noel simply remarks, that is the Kronos Empire. Flora Lawrence then addresses both Baron Noel and Marquis Vanderberg, warning them that Kronos is advancing faster than expected. She insists that in order to buy time, Cairo must accept Kronos' request for talks. After considering this, Marquis Vanderberg reluctantly agrees, stating that Count Fabius will be necessary for the negotiations. The scene then shifts to a few days later at the Cairo border. Duke Bamford approaches the border alone, where he is met by Count Fabius. As the two men stare each other down, Duke Bamford wastes no time with formalities. He directly accuses Dimitry of violating continental law, stating that the use of poison is strictly prohibited. Hearing this, Count Fabius smiles and responds that he understands Duke Bamford's concern, but clarifies that the rule is merely a recommendation, not a binding obligation. Laughing, he further adds that since Kronos has a history of crossing borders without warning, Count Fabius assumed that poison wouldn't be an issue either. Hearing this, Duke Bamford, filled with anger, warns Count Fabius to choose his words carefully, stating that he would do well to be cautious with what he says. Duke Bamford then asks, has Dimitry forgotten that the Salamander continent has banned poison? In response, Count Fabius calmly remarks, there was a historically significant event, wasn't there? Duke Bamford continues, explaining that long ago, before Kronos earned its imperial title, when it was still divided into smaller kingdoms, those kingdoms waged war to seize each other's territories and used highly contagious poison as a weapon. As a result, 30% of the population across 3 nations perished in a catastrophic disaster. Count Fabius nods and replies, yes, I know that well. But I must point out that those 3 nations, which were wiped out, were later absorbed into the Kronos Empire. And didn't Kronos benefit greatly from that? He then adds, frankly, if it were any other nation, perhaps this argument would hold weight. But I never expected the Kronos Empire, a nation that openly wields dark magic, to condemn the use of poison. If poison is considered child's play, then dark magic is a force that threatens all of humanity. Duke Bamford asks, does Count Fabius have any proof that the Kronos Empire uses dark magic? Hearing this, Count Fabius smirks and replies, is that so? Sending shadow agents to carry out assassinations, deploying dark mages to attack Dimitry, and yet, you still ask for evidence. Duke Bamford's expression hardens in frustration. At that moment, Count Fabius steps closer and states, if Dimitry truly wanted to bring down Kronos easily, we would have spread poison in the heart of the Empire. But we have chosen to set our own limits. So let's move past this. Neither Kronos nor Dimitry is in any position to lecture on morality. Duke Bamford then asks, do you know why I left the battlefield, Count Fabius? Because I understand the true strength of the Kronos Empire. Even without me, Kronos will inevitably rule the continent. He continues, Roman Dimitry is an impressive man. Everything he has accomplished thus far is remarkable, but that's all. Before the might of Kronos, all of his achievements become meaningless. With a smirk, he adds, so struggle to the very end. Let me witness Dimitri's resistance, for it is only in such moments that I truly feel alive. The scene shifts to Kevin, who struggles to understand what is happening and why he is still engaged in battle. At that moment, Roman appears before him and asks, are you going to give up like this? What did I tell you before? Kevin recalls Roman's words and responds, live for me. Back in the present, Kevin suddenly wakes up and asks how much time has passed. The butler, shocked to see him regain consciousness, watches as Kevin sits up and urgently inquires about what transpired while he was unconscious. The butler quickly explains the situation, and upon hearing this, Kevin rushes outside, declaring that he must go to the Western Front immediately. The butler attempts to stop him, but Kevin does not listen. As he steps out of the room, he is surprised to find Count Fernando standing there. Count Fernando looks at him and says, go back inside and rest. He then adds, I understand how you feel, but even if you go, there is nothing you can do right now. Wouldn't it be wiser to focus on your recovery first? Kevin shakes his head. I can't do that. My reason for living is Lord Roman. Without hesitation, he dashes past Count Fernando, declaring, if Lord Roman is on the battlefield, then I must be there too. As Kevin runs off, Count Fernando watches him go and sighs. How am I supposed to stop him? He mutters to himself. The scene then shifts to the Cairo border, where a soldier urgently signals the arrival of an enemy attack. Marquis Vanderberg stands alongside Florence and Baron Noel, observing the battlefield. He remarks, I thought Dimitry had bought us time with the poison, but it seems Kronos has abandoned detoxification and chosen to attack instead. His expression hardens as he continues, and leading them is Duke Bamford, a seasoned veteran of war. He must have instinctively decided not to give Dimitry any time to prepare. At that moment, the Marquis notices an old man standing at the front of the advancing Kronos forces. A look of curiosity crosses his face as he wonders about the identity of this mysterious figure.